And as parents, we tend to try to replicate the good memories that we had for our children. If we had happy childhoods, we want to give them a happy childhood that looks a lot like what we knew. And so a lot of times we want to recreate those things.
Yes.
And we have to understand that it's not about recreating, it's about creating.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Zan Tyler podcast, where our goal is to help you thrive in your homeschool journey. Let me take just a minute to ask you to please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen or watch, including YouTube. And if this podcast has been encouraging to you, please leave us a 5-star review. Each review really helps us and helps other families like you find the podcast. I'm excited to have Amy Harrell Smith with us today for part 2 of this episode. If you missed part 1, please make sure you go back and listen. Amy and her husband have 4 children and began homeschooling 11 years ago and never looked back. Amy has a heart to encourage parents in all facets of their homeschool journey. Today, she'll be sharing with us how she decided on using video instruction in her homeschool and how BJU Press Homeschool played a vital role in that decision. If you've been looking for help in your homeschooling journey, you'll find it today. So stay tuned. I think you will really be encouraged by this episode. This podcast is brought to you by BJU Press Homeschool. Homeschooling is an exciting adventure we take with our children. One of the most challenging parts of this journey is choosing the curriculum you want to use. BJU Press Homeschool is a curriculum you can trust. All the books, resources, and videos have been designed with you and your child in mind. Their curriculum is educationally robust and rich, taking into account that children have different learning styles, strengths, and needs. Mom, you are in charge. BJU Press Homeschool is here to come alongside and support you. Do you need help with the teaching load, or is there a subject you just don't want to teach? Their amazing video courses are available for all grades and almost every subject. BJU Press Homeschool believes that homeschooling can produce a new generation of students who know God, love their neighbors, and stand firm in their faith. For more information, go to bjupresshomeschool.com. That's bjupresshomeschool.com. You know, the world has changed so much. When I grew up, I went to the public school. We walked to school. My mother taught there. My German Shepherd walked to school with me and sat by my feet in my desk. My teacher lived across the street, and she loved this dog. And all the kids in the class loved this dog. We'd ride him at recess. You know, it's just, there were devotions in the classroom.
Yeah.
And so, Amy, here's a crazy story. When we were in elementary school, Joe was in Greenville. He remembers having a meeting of the whole school in the auditorium because there was one child who was going through a divorce. So they had to explain what divorce was and how can we support this child.
Wow.
And I remember having a meeting in our classroom, in one of our classrooms. There was one child out of this whole class of 30 kids whose parents had divorced. Most of us didn't even know what that was.
Right.
And so, you know, it was a different day in terms of supporting the family, supporting your faith. But you do have those nostalgic memories that are strong and powerful.
Right.
And I was, you know, I'm not sure I've ever voiced like you did that nostalgia can be a barrier, but it certainly can be. And it can be one of the biggest ones in our hearts, because the last thing we want to do is rob our children of good memories.
Right. And as parents, we tend to try to replicate the good memories that we had for our children. If we had happy childhoods, we want to give them a happy childhood that looks a lot like what we knew. And so a lot of times we want to recreate those things. Yes. And we have to understand that it's not about recreating, it's about creating. God is a creator, and he made us little creators as well. We're supposed to create new experiences. And we have to trust that as we homeschool, we're actually giving them new experiences that we never had because we were sitting in a classroom all day, 5 days a week. We never had. And it doesn't mean that your homeschool has to be running around doing field trips every day either. It's just, even I'm confident that my kids are going to look back and they're going to love the fact that they got to sit in a chair or on a couch with a textbook and learn things in the comfort of their own home. You know, I feel like that's going to be nostalgic for them one day. They're going to look back and they're going to think about their education and they're going to love that it panned out this way, even though I know that mine looked a lot different being in a school setting, you know?
That's right. Well, that is so powerful. I really appreciate you landing on that in your obstacle discussion, because we need to think about those things so that they don't sneak up on us and slap us in the face. You know,
exactly.
You know,
yeah. They can shake you to your core if you're not ready for them.
They can. Yeah. And other people are really willing to help your kids out feel like they're missing out on something.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, so that's that, and socialization is just where people love to live, you know.
Don't get me started.
I know, and I think those two are actually connected, because they're thinking of all the things that they loved about their childhood too, and how could you deprive your children? And socialization just then blends all in there with it. So we weren't planning to talk about socialization, but tell me why socialization is not an issue for homeschool parents and kids.
You know, for 8 years, my husband was the youth pastor at our church, and I had the privilege, the honor to work with him and working with those youth. And this was back when we were just having kids, when Reagan was just being born. So, you know, this goes back about 16 years ago. And I remember some of the discussions that I had with my girls group. And these girls were in a public school here, a public middle school that has a decent reputation. You know, it wasn't one of the schools that everybody tries to move out of that district. It was a decent school. And these girls were treating each other like garbage. And I hadn't even thought of homeschooling yet, but once homeschooling came on the radar, I thought, if that's how public school is accomplishing socialization, then I'm okay being weird, you know?
That's right. And now with social media and cyberbullying and it's just compounded exponentially.
It has gotten exactly worse and worse. So, you know, now in this past year where I've been trying to help arm other parents with information, I've looked into the research, I've seen the research that multiple studies show that homeschoolers are better socialized. And when you have a child in an environment with their own siblings, their parents, people who love them, as opposed to the traditional school setting where you're kind of just thrown in a mix with people that you may or may not know, you may or may not like, they may or may not like you. There's a confidence, a security that is built inside that child in that environment that actually helps them to be able to thrive even better in different social settings. And so my experience has been, even before I started homeschooling my children, most homeschoolers I've encountered, I'm not going to say everybody, that's a blanket statement and that's a stereotype, and we're not going to get into projecting stereotypes. Most homeschoolers that I have known who have gotten on into their teenage years, they converse better with adults, with people of different ages, from different backgrounds, different cultures, than the children who have been raised in primarily traditional school.
And you know, I think it's safe to say for most of us, if we had to, you know, I guess number one for me is preserving the integrity of my children's faith. But besides that, if I had to choose one reason to homeschool, it's really socialization. Yeah. And, you know, nobody ever stops to say, well, there is positive socialization and negative socialization. It's not just one blob, you know, there's the good side and the downside. And so I think that's really wise.
It goes both ways for sure.
Yes. Yeah. So you make us the wiser homeschool.
There's a verse in Proverbs that says, the wise man will become wiser still. So I believe that no matter what level we feel like we've reached in confidence and knowledge and understanding what we're doing, there's always another level of wisdom that we can tap into. So hence the name Wiser Homeschool.
I love that. I love the name of the website. So was there a last obstacle we need to mention before we go on?
I think we got all 4 of them: peer pressure, questioning your abilities, lacking information, and nostalgia.
Okay, that's great. Well, and you can get Amy's one more time. Amy's free ebook on wiserhomeschool.com. And
Yes.
I think you will really benefit from that. So let's move on. And I want to ask you what curriculum you chose that first year, how you landed on it, and why you stayed with it.
Wonderful. So when I was in school, I spent about half of the time in private schools, about half in public schools, and then 1 year homeschooling. So it was a hodgepodge.
Which year did you homeschool? What grade were you in?
9th grade. So the private school that I had gone to here, where I live now, had used curriculum or textbooks from BJU and another publisher that provides both homeschool and private school curriculum. And I remember as a kid thinking that BJU's textbooks were more engaging, more colorful. I liked them better. And then I got 9th grade. We homeschooled that year. And I think we may have used a mixture. I can't remember exactly what curriculum we used. But fast forward, all those years later, and we're deciding now, okay, the preschool thing didn't pan out for Reagan. She's already ahead of what they were going to teach in K4. Let's look at homeschool options. And for whatever reason, when I started searching, I didn't think of BJU first. I thought of the other one. I went and I found out that curriculum provider had some video curriculum options. They weren't my favorite, but I was working full time. I needed something to help me. So I thought, okay, well, we'll just go for it. I set up a meeting with them. You know how I said I feel like God always directs our steps when we expect him to?
Yes.
There was a miscommunication with their sales rep, and she didn't show up for the call at the time that I thought I was supposed to be on. So I got kind of put out with that, to be honest. I just decided, well, before I dive in with this curriculum, I'm going to see what else is out there. And then I remembered BJU Press, and I'm like, why did I not think of this first? And when I saw their videos, I loved that they were done what I called, this is going to age me, I called Mr. Rogers style. It's the person on the screen talking directly to you.
To the child, that's right.
Yeah, it wasn't a camera in the back of a classroom watching other kids be taught. It was right there, face to face. They had a lot of engaging content, where they would cut away to different slideshows and video clips and things like that. And I loved it. And so I got on the phone with one of their consultants, I guess. I called BJU and they connected me to a consultant who helped me go through the scope and sequence, which that's one thing when parents are looking for where to start their kids or which grade level they should be in. A lot of parents don't know that BJU publishes a scope and sequence PDF. You can find it just by Googling it. And it will give you all the individual concepts that will be taught in each subject for each grade level. So this consultant on the phone that day went through with me line item by line item. Does your daughter already know this? Does she already know this? Do you think she can handle this? And by the end of the conversation, we determined that my 4-year-old was actually ready for kindergarten material. So that's how we got started. We ordered the grade kit and went with it. And then she did so well that it was really a no-brainer from that point. All that really came into question from that point on was how we were going to adapt and make this curriculum fit us, not whether or not we were going to continue using this curriculum.
I think one thing you said there is so key is how can we adapt and make this fit us? Because every curriculum has to be adapted to your child and your home and your priorities. It doesn't matter which one it is. The curriculum is the tool and not the rule.
Exactly.
And so yeah, that's powerful. So now, what are you still continuing to use the BJ? So let me say this. BJU Press Homeschool is the sponsor of the Zan Tyler podcast, and I am so delighted with that, and thankful to them for that. We used from the second year we homeschooled. We couldn't use it the first year because of a crazy law, but from the second year on, we used a lot of BJU Press curriculum in our homeschool. They were the only people who would sell teacher manuals to homeschoolers back in the day.
Wow.
And so I'm so grateful to them, and just the way in the last, I would say especially the last decade, they have made things so homeschool friendly and have really reached out and supported the homeschooling community in ways too numerous to talk, not only with their curriculum, but their support of homeschooling organizations. We were just talking about the Global Homeschool Home Education Conference in England with a prior guest. All these things BJU Press is doing to really support homeschoolers. So I had to take a minute just to thank our sponsor as we were having this conversation. So thank you, Amy. So now tell us about having multiple children and making this decision to continue to use the videos.
Well, honestly, once we saw that Reagan took off with it and she did really well, you know, kind of once you have one win under your belt, it's easier to go for it again. So when our first son, Cole, got to about age 3 or 3.5, we thought, you know, we started Reagan with K5 when she was 4. Maybe Cole's ready for K4. And the K4 program, before anybody shoots me down, is so light and easy.
Right.
I wasn't trying to strap my kids into 8 hours of schoolwork a day. You know,
that's
it was
right. That's right.
Very manageable. It was something fun, something to expose. I love how the teachers talk about it being exposure and not mastery in those early years.
Yes.
And so we started him with that, and he got motivated, you know, again, that first child kind of persona for him.
Yes.
And so then by the time Isaac came along, he didn't have a choice. And then Miles is the one after him. So we've just continued with each one, you know, starting them and then adapting as we go.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you about this, because there's so much controversy over kids spending too much time on screens. Right. Tell me how you reconcile that with that conversation that's ongoing.
Personally, I feel that if there's any danger to too much screen time for my kids, it's going to come from the television, or it's going to come from the games I'm letting them play on their devices. You know, we have a limited amount of time every day we give them to play games, things like that. If I start getting worried about screen time, those things are going to need to get cut before school. Yes. School videos, to me, are not detrimental screen time, and especially because we've learned down through the years how to not have to spend hours and hours in front of a screen watching videos. So by adjusting that and adjusting our workload of when we're in the books, when we're in the videos, I don't really feel that screen time is coming into play as much for school as it is for all the other things. You know, they're being hit with screens everywhere you turn. We all are. And so that's really where I feel like we need to come in with more vigilant controls and parameters is in everything else. I don't feel like school is going to be the detrimental thing.
You know, one of the things I love particularly about the BJU Press videos is that they're very engaging and interactive. Yes. They cut away to different segments. They'll say pause now and read your textbook, pause now and ask your parent, or, you know, and then there'll be some lessons that don't have a video with them at all. So I feel like it's the cream of the crop in terms of video instruction, because it's not this passive experience like you would watch with a television show. You know, it's a very dynamic. Okay. So
interactive. Yeah.
One of the things, so if you haven't seen Amy's YouTube channel, you need to go there, Amy Harrell Smith. And I had so much fun watching your videos last night, Amy.
You.
How have I not known you? And
thank you.
It was so delightful. But one of the things you did, you talked about, it wasn't 5 hacks, I can't remember, 5 ways to reduce your screen time when you're using videos. And there's such easy fixes and things. Some of things really I would tell anybody using any curriculum, but I don't know that I gave you warning on this, but would you mind, you know, starting with doubling the speed? I mean, those types of things.
I'd love to.
You know?
Yes. And I have to give it, if you're looking for the video, it's 5 tips I believe, to shorten. I think it's 5 tips to shorten your school day with BJU Press online.
Okay. Yes.
I have an older video from about a year ago that's 9 tips on how to shorten your day or year, because some people are looking to shorten the day, some people are looking to compress their year. So that one's a little more generic, but the one that I just released recently is specific from our BJU online video curriculum experience. And so the very first hack that can save you time every day right away is speed up those videos. Yes. And that goes right into with your screen time concern as well. If you have a 20-minute video, but you play it back at 1.5 times, you've just shaved off 5 minutes. That's right. If you can play it at 2 times and still understand the teacher, you've just cut it in half. You've got a 10-minute video instead of a 20. And that's really great in shortening your day, but also in boosting the morale of your kids. Because there's just something about feeling like, oh, okay, I can watch a 10-minute video. Sometimes my kids will come in and go, Mom, it's a 30-minute video. I said, not by the time you speed it up. Yes. And they're the ones who found that hack, by the way. They're the ones, they're the ones who discovered it. So I let them do it as long as they can, as long as I can understand the teacher, they can speed it up.
And they have the volume on.
Exactly. It has to be up where they can hear it. Yes. More rules. So.
I think that's a brilliant answer. And just let me say this too to our listeners. Those videos are not 50-minute videos with the camera behind the classroom, like you said earlier. These are one-on-one videos with the teacher talking to the student, and you don't have the distraction of a classroom full of students, raising their hand, asking to go to the restroom, and Johnny and Billy are fighting again. I remember watching one of those videos, So
and
this
just
is totally
the boredom.
Different. Yes.
The boredom of watching other kids get taught. If you're going to do that, go sit in a classroom.
That is true. Okay, so number two, shorten the assignments. Remember, you're driving the bus.
So just because the curriculum may assign 45 problems, or maybe they say do only the odds or only the evens. I'm thinking in math in particular. Yes. Mm-hmm. Math and English have a lot of that repetition in their work text pages. Go ahead and shorten that more. If you feel like your kid is getting it, sometimes I'll let them skip the whole thing if they really have the concept down.
Right, but really, that's right. If they know it, they know it.
Yeah. But a lot of these work text pages are laid out to where you may have 10 or 15 problems at the top that are all similar. And then you'll have in the middle of the page another 10 problems. And then you'll have a few word problems at the bottom. Well, instead of making them do half of those problems, I look at it and I say, okay, show me that you can do 2 or 3 in the top section, 2 or 3 in the next section, and 1 word problem. If they do all of that with no issues, moving on. Let's go to the next lesson.
They've demonstrated mastery. And because at this point, you're going for mastery, not exposure, as in the earlier years.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Perfect. Yeah.
And so, at that point, if they can do it, keep going. Because they're going to come back to this on the reviews. They're going to come back to it on the test. It's going to reappear down the road. So if there is a problem, you will find out about it.
Right.
You don't have to make them sit there for 45 minutes doing a work text page.
Yes.
So that's the second thing. Shorten the assignments. Third thing, skip some videos. And I know people think, well, I paid so much for these videos, but they're there for you to use at your disposal. So there are times, I think I give reading as an example. A lot of times, and I love when Mrs. Walker does those reading classes, but they may take 2 or 3 lessons on one story. Well, maybe I'll have them watch the video for the first lesson of that story and kind of get the introduction, get the setting, understand what's going on. And then maybe they can skip the video the next day. They don't necessarily, they can just do the reading and do the work text. They don't have to watch every single video for every single lesson. That's the third tip. The fourth is to evaluate the emphasis you put on each subject. And what I mean by that is not all subjects are created equal, and you're going to need to determine what your priorities are for you and your kids. Most of the time, math and English are going to be at the top of that list. Usually, science is going to be up there either with them or right below them. Then you've got all of these other things. You've got handwriting, spelling, vocabulary, history or heritage studies. You have all of these other subjects. They don't all have to be given the utmost priority consistently, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So one thing that I explained in the video, and I won't bore you with it here, but we changed our approach to history, to heritage studies, because I decided I want my kids exposed to all of this wonderful history. I don't care if they master and memorize dates
all
and lines
dates.
from speeches and who did this when. I don't, because what I did is I memorized it, I took the test, and I forgot it.
Yes.
So I don't feel like making history tedious for them and making it something they dread is productive in the long run. I would rather them read these stories or hear about them on the videos, move on. We don't even do work text for history anymore. Then when they hear somebody say something about whatever it is, oh yeah, that rings a bell. I read that in my heritage studies class.
Right.
So you can kind of reevaluate the emphasis there, and that'll help you know where you can shave down some time on your school day. You don't have to give every subject all of that time every single time. And then the last one is not going to be for everybody, okay? It's something that we sort of morphed into, and I call it an ultra block schedule. So consider whether an ultra block schedule would work for you. You know, you're familiar with block scheduling from traditional schools. Some of them use it, where you may have A days, B days. You do some subjects one day, some the other.
Right.
Well,
and
we
they're
found
longer classes. Yeah.
Right. Well, a few years ago, we had this idea, you know, if they're really making progress in one subject, why not let them just go full force with that subject and really knock it out, and they can ride that momentum. And so what we do now is we get our curriculum for the year. We start with 1 or 2 subjects, and they just hit those subjects every day that we do school until the subject's over. And then we put it away and start another one. So I may have one kid who's doing math and reading, and another kid who's doing science and spelling, and another kid who's doing something else, but they just knock it out, and they're able to do, you know, say 5 or 6 lessons a day of that one subject. And that goes way faster than 5 or 6 lessons of different subjects.
That's right, because you don't have the daily review. And
Yeah.
I mean, for one thing, so you just keep moving from concept to concept to concept.
Right.
And while it's fresh in their mind, I have to tell you, I love this approach. I really love this approach. And we did that kind of unwittingly. You start doing that when you're homeschooling. Oh, we've got so much momentum in this subject or this paper or this project.
Right.
The beauty is, like John Taylor Gatto says, in homeschool, you don't have to move from bell to bell and cell to cell, you know. And so I just think it's masterful, just masterful. So.
And you get to capitalize on their momentum too.
And their interest.
There is some ups and downs. There are some ups and downs with that. If they start out with all the subjects they love, then they're going to get in the position that Isaac's in right now, where all he has left is reading, and it's his least favorite subject. So I actually sat down with him yesterday, and we talked about ways to streamline reading. But he's really excited that he's finished math, heritage studies, English. I mean, he's knocked it all out.
Yeah,
other than he's just got some reading to finish. So.
That's amazing. That is really amazing. Well, Amy, we need to wrap up, but let me ask you this. Is there a Bible verse or a scripture passage that has been particularly meaningful to you as a homeschool mom?
There has been. And if it's okay, can I share 2?
Absolutely.
Because there's one that I wanted to answer your question accurately, but then there's another one that came to me last night as I was thinking about our conversation today. So the first one that I've kind of reflected on from time to time is in Deuteronomy. It's chapter 6, and it's verses 6 and 7, and it says, "These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up." And I love, love, love that just paints a picture of doing life and interweaving education with life. You are interweaving the knowledge of the Lord, the knowledge of his commandments, his ways, his values into every aspect of life. When you're at home, when you're walking around, when you're going places, you are doing life with your kids here in this homeschool journey that you're on. And as you do life together, you are instilling all of these valuable things in them. And then the scripture that came to me last night, just in terms of this unshakable confidence that we're trying to build, is one of my favorites from Psalm 62:6. And it says, "Truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken." So going back to knowing your why, even deeper than that, I would say know your who. And if you're a believer, know who you are connected with. You are connected with Jesus Christ. And the Bible says that we have the mind of Christ. So that automatically trumps all of your inadequacies, all of your inhibitions, all of your lack of confidence. If you can stand in your decision and know that you have the mind of Christ, then there's really no limit to what kind of wonderful education you can give your kids.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for being here with me for these 2 episodes. Oh my goodness, what a joy to have found you.
Thank you. Same.
So let me ask you to tell our listeners and viewers where they can find you.
Okay. Thank you so much. You can find my resources on wiserhomeschool.com. And then you can follow me on social. I'm on YouTube and Instagram at Amy Harrell Smith, and on Facebook at Wiser Homeschool.
Great. Well, you heard it here, and you can always find me at zantyler.com and on social media. So we just want to thank you today for being with us. I know you've been blessed by Amy and our conversation together, and I just pray that the Lord continues to bless you, your family, and your school year. Until next time, bye.